Um, I have been listening to the different presentations over a couple of days, and I think mine is a bit of an outlier, especially since it's focusing more of employees becoming the students. So it's not necessarily like the university students that I think most of the topics were about, but this is more of the employees that work, and then we have to become students in order to upgrade or stay up to date with what is out there in terms of technology. So it's basically more about corporate learning. So, corporate learning, which is the process of teaching specialized knowledge to employees to help them gain new skills and abilities. And I'm focusing on employees of all levels, so from junior, middle, and senior management within a specific South African bank. And we are all provided with corporate training. So, everyone within the study will have done some sort of corporate training. And then e-learning uses technology to deliver and assess content. E-learning facilitates uninterrupted education, information, communication, and training to individuals or groups without time or geographical constraints. So the background, factors contributing to the increased adoption of e-learning. So usually technology developments, globalizations of businesses, and the increased prevalence of remote working, which we saw a rise of, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And past that is that usually a lot of people in corporate now work remotely or hybridly. And then the industries that use e-learning for training and development, it's usually banking, telecoms, retail, health industries. These all use e-learning to train their staff members. Various e-learning tools and platforms are being used by banks to create, deliver, and manage e-learning contents for assessment, discussion, and other interactive activities. So the reason for this study and the research question. By understanding employees' experience and perceptions of e-learning for trading and development in a South African bank, this paper aims to inform employees and their employers, as well as the third-party e-learning providers and researchers. So the main research question is, how do the different employee levels perceive and experience e-learning used for training and development in a South African bank? What other e-learnings are currently being used to train and develop the different levels of employees? How do the different levels of employees at this bank believe e-learning assists in developing their skills and knowledge? What are the benefits of e-learning for different levels of employees? And what are the challenges of e-learning that are faced by these different employees? So I am currently using like a systematic review of the literature, and the keywords that I've searched on is the e-learning, learning, training and development, technology, employees and banks. And those are the databases I've searched and the inclusions and yeah, criteria. So e-learning, developing skills and knowledge. E-learning is often divided into mandatory e-learnings, which is what employees are forced to learn or forced to do. And then the voluntary ones is where the employee takes it up upon themselves to become a student and then train themselves on a topic that they enjoy or a skill that they want to learn for their own benefit. And it's usually not forced by the organization. E-learning initiatives succeed with the right corporate culture, support from the company's leaders, investments in technology infrastructure, and continued focus on digital inclusivity, and therefore this e-learning can succeed. E-learning assists in closing the skills gap and improve worker performance, increase access to training and development, and improve efficiencies and reduce the costs. The types of e-learnings that are available, it's the gamification, where you can use game mechanics and the game aspects in a non-gaming environment. This is just to make people more competitive. So when people see that they are either number one on the leaderboard, then it pushes the next person to want to learn more, to focus more, push on the learnings that they're doing. There's also mobile learning, which uses smartphones and tablets where you can either download an app and do the learning on your mobile phone. And then there's learning management systems, which are the softwares and systems that are created to deliver and manage educational and training content by promoting learning and learning by using their tools and functions. So the benefits and the challenges of e-learnings, the benefits is that it is very accessible because you can do it at any time, which is the real-time feedback. Um, there's better information retention and the cost effectiveness because the organizations are not usually spending on like transport and food and, you know, for moving the employees to a certain institute to go learn specifically there. So it's more easily accessible and employees can do it at any time that they feel comfortable. The challenges is the lack of employee involvement, power issues or constraints. So if there's like load shedding or the um, Wi-Fi goes down. There's limited social interactions because this is usually excluded. Employees usually do it on their own at their own pace. Whenever they are free with their laptop or computer, and then the relevant the quality of content and the effective learning content. Because there's so much e-learning out there, so much content out there, it can be difficult sometimes to find the correct content that is relevant to what the employee wants to learn at that specific time. They usually have to sift through a lot of content in order to find what is really relevant to what they want to learn at that specific moment. So conclusions that corporate learning is an integral part in developing employee skills. E-learning has increasingly become the prominent and preferred method for training and development. Employees of all levels are required to do mandatory e-learnings training in the banking industry, and then a variety of e-learning methods that can be used, such as gamification, based on the learning needs of that specific organization. Employees face both the benefits and the challenges when they are enrolling in e-learning training. Limitations, only 3 databases were used. So even though a systematic process was followed, articles in other databases may have been excluded. Only papers published in English and relevant in other language were not considered. Relevant papers published after a search date were not reviewed. Future research is that as the field of e-learning being used for corporate training is rapidly advancing, future work needs to research newer employees' experience and perceptions of the e-learning technology as it develops. And yeah, that's the end.
Thank you so much. Already have a question on the chat. It's should the world of work also consider curriculum development or design aspects when thinking about continuous professional learning?
Okay, yes, I think this is really true that we can look at considering curriculum developments because, like I said, in terms of what is done for mandatory training, that's where maybe there is some sort of curriculum, but I don't know in terms of how it is approved and made sure that it fits a standard. But for voluntary e-learning, because it's something that employees do take up on their own, you can go to different websites like YouTube, Udemy, and you search whatever you find there, it's out there. So there isn't any curriculum to say if you want to follow this path, this is what you follow, or this is what you learn. So developing a curriculum could really help, in my opinion.
And there was a follow-up as well, and the floor is open to other colleagues that would want to jump in. The follow-up was, what would authenticity look like within that space, that context?
Interesting question because, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah. Rita, any suggestions or thoughts
No, I was
that would
going.
look?
I mean, it would be interesting because here you have somebody who's working pretty much the full day. So what would you be considering in that professional learning programs or activities that you want to put out for somebody who's been actually practicing, and what is it they could bring rather than just the training aspects? What would it look like if we start to engage the knowledge they bring from the site of the work itself and into the conceptual work that you want to put out through your activities in Siki. I think what I would like to ask is, do you have a formal continuous professional learning structure or program that is being fed into? Or, I mean, I heard of the, that this could be done, and yeah, maybe you want to comment about what does that continuous professional learning, is it a framework, or is it just ad hoc at the moment?
At the moment, it's just ad hoc. You take it upon yourself to say, this is what I want to learn, and finding the content. What the corporate does, they do provide guidelines to say these are the websites that we advise you can look at. But also on those websites, you can find multiple lectures. So it's not really guided. Then there are some certifications that you can do where you write formal tests, then get a certificate. And for those, there is sort of like a curriculum or a guide on these are the things that you need to study, and yeah, these are the steps that you need to take. But what I've seen is, because people are working, and like you said, people already have the experience, they would rather take a shortcut to go on YouTube, watch the quick videos on YouTube that get straight to the point, cram for whatever certification, and then finish it. So yeah, there isn't really, it's more ad hoc.
Okay, no, thank you for that. But there is a CETA, and there is,
Yes.
yeah, that financial build in the bank, isn't it, with their professional development?
Yes, it is there, but in like even in my personal experience, I haven't received like any certificate from CETA or seen the input in the certifications that we get here, because
Okay.
people would rather get like more international recognized certificates like an AWS or Microsoft, and how you get that or where you study for that, it would be up to you. They just know where you can write to get that certification.
Thank you so much, Ntiki.
Yeah, so maybe just to speak to that as well, in terms of the voluntary training, right? In your experience, either personally or just the people that you work with currently, what are the general perceptions of e-learning around what you were speaking to, or from the literature, just at an initial glance? Okay, I think we have lost Siki. Okay, but we still have quite a bit of time before the session wraps up, and she is back. Siki, can you hear us?
Hi, sorry, my battery died. Yes, I
No
can hear
problem. No problem. Okay, so I'll ask the question again. So the question was, in terms of, you spoke about voluntary e-learning, right, in the space.
Yes.
So what I wanted to find out was just either in terms of your personal experience as you move up the ladder, or with the
Yeah.
people that you work with. So you spoke about juniors, mid-level, seniors. What are the general perceptions around e-learning in your space?
Um, in my space, like we've gotten used to e-learning because that's what we have been using now, especially since COVID. So we don't really attend those classes that we used to attend. And I think I also touched on it that maybe more organizations see the cost benefits for it because it's less cost for them. They don't have to hire out a venue, provide food and all of that. So they can just send us a link and you do that e-learning training with a specific due date. And I think more people do also enjoy e-learning because you can do it on your own time, whenever you are free, whenever you are ready. It's the same as not having to drive to a specific venue and be in a classroom with other people.
Right.
But I think the disadvantage is actually finding time to do it, because at least when we had classroom training, time was booked out. But now, because they send the link to you, you can do it whatever time. It's really not like time is not allocated. You need to squeeze it in, whether you do it in the morning, in the afternoon, whenever. It's
Mm.
not formalized anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even in the higher education space, people can actually relate to that in terms of finding their own time for professional learning, where it might not always be um, integrated into into the time, the work time or the work day.
Yeah. Yes.
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, can I ask something?
Yes.
Is Nsiki still here? Nsiki,
Yes.
is the training and those activities, even if it's coming from, you know, that you go on, but somebody sending out to you, is it sitting at an HR department as their function? Or, yeah, and I
Yes.
guess because you said there's no professional learning, that perhaps is then falling. But where would that sit, the
So
professional learning of the staff?
it's the so what the HR and the learning and development teams, like in banking, what their type of learning that is mandatory they would send us would be like the reminders of the industry standards of like the poppy training, the fraud and risk training. Those That's what sits within HR. And then with the learning and development team, you can approach them for upskilling yourself. Like if I wanna continue with my masters, I can approach them, and then they would advise if they can be willing to pay for it or not. But for like the voluntary stuff that I want to do to upskill myself, yeah, you just approach them basically for the funding and maybe the websites, and it's really upon yourself to finish that off. But the mandatory ones, HR does keep track to make sure that you are up to date with the industry standards. And yeah.
Thanks for that.